Today on Studio One, we'll tell you how some are telling their stories for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Also, one group keeps a clogging tradition alive. And in our Studio One Spotlight, we'll look into the trend of catering to people's wellness needs.
From the University of North Dakota, this is Studio One, celebrating 25 years.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Studio One. I'm Monty Cashel.
And I'm Katie Fletcher.
Well, we have a treat today. It literally is a treat, and I can't wait to do this. It is a yummy treat. We're going to have someone come on the show to tell us how to make the perfect pico de gallo. And if you've never had that, it's like a fresh salsa.
Right. Some like their salsa mild, some like it spicy.
And I have no idea how it's going to be made. I have made it before, so I'm really curious how this is made. I know it's going to be good, so wait around for that. Also on the show, across the country, women are hanging t-shirts on clotheslines that bear a powerful message. Find out how this act gives a voice to the voiceless.
And social media gives people options on how they receive their daily news. Later, we'll meet a man whose knowledge of communication brought him to the White House.
But first, here's today's news with Ali Strand.
Thanks, Monty and Katie. A 14-year-old Pakistani girl is in critical condition from a gunshot wound to the neck. Malala Yousafzai was shot twice on a bus on Tuesday by members of the Taliban. Malala was known for speaking out in support of better education for young girls in Pakistan. She is known as a fighter for peace throughout the country. Members of the Taliban say they will attempt the assassination again if she survives. Her father has also been added to her hit list. Lance Armstrong has asked to see the evidence showing his used illegal performance-enhancing drugs. The U.S. Anti-Doping Agency gave him a 200-page document filled with his accounts of his drug use. 26 people gave testimonies that tied Armstrong to illegal performance-enhancing procedures. Armstrong is chosen not to pursue the case. However, he does feel that the USADA case against him is unfair. He argues that special rules were used that are not followed in all cases. All the medicines and vaccines we take to keep us healthy may cause more harm than good. Some are now experiencing more allergies than before. A study done by the University of Minnesota reports the number of children with peanut allergies are on a consistent rise. 8% of kids in America have food allergies. 70% of them are boys. In some parts of the U.S., this number has tripled in the past decade. There are no proven causes for this increase, but some theories suggest that too good of hygiene and health opportunities are the reason.
We do know that our immune system has to keep busy all the time. And if it's not busy fighting predators like it should, it tends to get into trouble like a wayward teenager.
Most allergies appear in toddlers, but in 20% of the cases, allergies go away as they grow older. America's most popular cosmetic surgery could be affecting the way in which moms relate to their children. A study published in the Journal of Social Psychology and Personality Science shows that Botox could limit the range of facial expressions. These expressions are a critical way in which parents and children communicate their emotions. The study also found that the toxins in Botox can lower a key emotion, empathy. Although using facial expressions is a key communicator, there are many other ways in which mothers communicate their feelings, such as voice tone, caressing, and singing. Victims of domestic violence have a tough feat in breaking the silence. Many live in fear without anyone knowing of their hardships. The Clothesline Project makes it easier for those to come forward and share their story.
The idea of hanging shirts that tell the victims' stories of domestic violence started in 1990 with 31 shirts. Today, over 50,000 are displayed worldwide.
It's kind of a twofold thing. It helps survivors. It's a healing process. And then also those who don't know about the situation can come and find out more.
The Clothesline Project encourages any woman or child to come forward with their story. Each colored shirt represents a type of domestic violence he or she went through.
White shirts are in memory of women or children who have died of violence. Yellow or beige shirts are for survivors who have been battered or assaulted.
The list goes on, with pink being for survivors of sexual assault, blue or green for those of incest or child sexual abuse, purple for those who have been attacked for their sexual orientation, and red for children who have witnessed violence in their home.
Reading all the stories and even just the simple t-shirts like hands are for hugging, not hitting, even that really got to me, I guess.
While visitors pass through to look at the shirts, Bells, gongs, and whistles may be heard. Each of these represents a different act of violence. The gong is for when a woman is battered and goes off every 10 to 12 seconds. The whistle signifies a reported rape every minute, and the bell is rung every 10 to 12 minutes for when a woman has died of violence.
Even with like the gong that goes off and the whistle and the bell, like as you're in there, you don't realize how much this is happening.
The Clothesline Project is always ready to help and make the hardships of victims easier by giving them back their voice. With photographer Victor Crea, I'm Taylor Nelson from Studio One.
The Clothesline Project started in Massachusetts and has grown to 41 states and 4 countries. And that's the news for now. Monty and Katie.
Thanks, Allie. Well, I've been noticing a lot of people out there raking those leaves. It's that time.
Yep, the leaves have fallen. Fall is in full swing. Well, let's go to Stephanie Waldriff now with the latest weather news.
Thanks, Katie and Monty. Yes, fall is in full swing, and we are still experiencing drought-like conditions that we've actually been experiencing throughout the whole summer. Now, the drought started actually last winter when less than average snowfall fell, which caused for less snowpack, and that caused for less melting of the snow and for less ground saturation in the early spring. And then that, along with the above-average temperatures this summer and the below-average precipitation throughout the summer, caused for the drought to worsen as the summer went on. Now, currently we are still in the drought with more than 40% of the United States with severe to extreme drought conditions and almost the rest of the United States in moderate drought conditions. Now, luckily though, in the beginning of October, we did have a storm system that came through and dropped a lot of snow on some areas that actually caused some improvement for the Red River Valley and parts of northwestern Minnesota. And that's because of the amount of precipitation that did fall. In areas that the most precipitation fell is where we saw the most improvement for the drought-like conditions and actually caused the drought to get just a bit better. Now, for the rest of the week, temperatures are going to be warm across much of the United States, stretching from Nevada and California all the way to the East Coast, with it being warmest in the Ohio River Valley. And then as long as precipitation goes, it's going to be more wet across much of the United States, stretching from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, and a little bit drier though in parts of New Mexico and Arizona. Now that brings us to our weather question of the day. What percentage of undecided voters say that bad weather would keep them from voting? Our answers range from 25% to 40%. And later on in the show, we are going to have a story about how the weather affects the polls.
All right, thanks, Stephanie, for that weather news.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things, and you know, people who try and get voters out, they try and figure out all the different ways.
Every single angle that could possibly get the voters there.
Exactly. Well, let's now turn to sports and some highlights. Brian Gendro's here.
Thanks, Monty and Katie. Down 2-0 in the ALDS, the Oakland A's fought for their season Tuesday night, earning a win against the Detroit Tigers. A Cinderella team all year, posting 13 walk-off wins, the A's needed a little more of that late-inning magic to keep their season alive. Join this one, A's down 3-1 in the bottom of the ninth, 2 in scoring position for Seth Smith. He'll get a piece of a fastball and drive it into right center. That will score 2 and tie it up at 3. Jose Valverde would retire the next 2 batters, bringing up Coco Crisp with just 1 out left in the A's season. He'll connect with the first pitch of the at-bat. Smith comes home from second, and just like that, the best-of-5 series is tied. 25-year-old Ryan Cook gets credited with the win. Now to the other AL playoff series, the Yankees and the Orioles tied at a game apiece. Game 3 in New York, bottom of 9. Pinch-hitting Raul Ibanez goes deep to knot the score. We won't even show him round the bases because he goes yard yet again. This time in extra innings, solo walk-off homer for Ibanez in the 12th. The Yankees go on to win this one 3-2 and now lead the series 2-1. It's tradition in the NHL for players to grow out their facial hair during the playoffs. But with the beginning to the season nowhere in sight, fans are using the superstition for a different reason. This past week brought more cancellations to the NHL schedule, this time games during the actual regular season. Negotiations are at a standstill between the NHL's Players Union and the NHL League officials. Fans of the league are protesting the lockout in a relatively humorous and harmless fashion. With the league dormant until at least the beginning of November, players and fans are using the scruffy tradition as protest to this hairy situation.
Even though the players and the coaches and the owners are, fighting over this huge amount of money, I mean, people are getting hurt of this are the fans and all the people who kept supporting them after, the NHL lockouts from before. And
The idea was started by a few of the league's players on Twitter, stating they wouldn't shave until an agreement was met. Separating the sides are numbers on two main issues: the players' share of what's called hockey-related revenue and player salaries. It's now time for the Studio One Sports Trivia question. Who was the last wide receiver to get drafted #1 overall in the NFL draft? Your answers there are Calvin Johnson, Keyshawn Johnson, Irving Fryer, and Terrell Owens. And the answer to that question will be later in the show. That's the sports for now. Monty and Katie?
Thanks, Brian. An industry has been built around keeping kids safe. Still, a recent survey says 20% of parents don't properly install their child's car seats. We asked your thoughts on what it was like in your parents' car when you were growing up.
And often when there's controversy or problems, people run the other way. Next, we'll meet a man who says he runs toward the fire.
Life is busy, but many professionals are finding ways to advance their career with a Master's in Business Administration at the University of North Dakota. Students attend UND online and on campus. The program is nationally recognized and emphasizes one-on-one with faculty. Find the title you deserve. Enroll today.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it, 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
You're watching Studio One, your source for news, weather, sports, and entertainment.
The way we communicate today is vastly different than even a decade ago. With more outlets to give and receive information, it sometimes requires strategy to communicate effectively. Owner of POD Strategies, Mark Feifley, will share his experience with the ways we communicate strategically. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
You've built up quite a resume since you've graduated from the University of North Dakota, and let's just run through a couple of those things. You were Deputy Communication Director at the Republican National Convention, Press Secretary and Communications Director for the Interior Secretary, White House Deputy National Security Advisor and Strategic Communication Global Outreach for President George W. Bush, early advisor on the scene of FEMA in New York City at Ground Zero after the September 11th attacks, and now currently you're the CEO of POD, a public relations communications firm in Washington, D.C., and that probably wasn't even all the jobs that you've had.
Yeah, but that and $4 you can get a free cup of coffee. You know, it's a lot of great experiences and a lot of work, but and met a lot of really wonderful people, and the experiences of going to UND really helped. put that together.
You've described yourself as a man that kind of runs towards the fire. What exactly do you mean by that?
I think that when one is trying to plan their career and what they want to do, you don't always go for where the biggest title is, or the best title, or the most salary you're going to make, or the biggest office you're going to have, but go to where you can learn the most, and you can meet the most people, and you can make a mistake or two, and you can learn from that, and you can continue on. Now I'm a little bit older, so I don't necessarily run to the fire. I kind of walk to the fire, or sometimes I walk to the Barca Lounger. But earlier in my career, that's the way I used to operate.
All right. Well, communication is, what all your careers have focused on here, and social media is something that you've used in your jobs. How has social media changed since the beginning of your career in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, and right now the campaigns like President Obama and Governor Romney, they have tens of thousands of email addresses. In 2000, when I started working in politics, a national political party had about 14,000 emails, less than the student body of UND, and that was our email activist lists. We didn't have Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. We had blogs in 2004, which was the very popular thing. 2008, of course, was kind of the explosion of Twitter and of Facebook and YouTube. Now it's one of the main ways that candidates are communicating. They don't even sometimes put an advertisement on TV. They put the advertisement right on YouTube, and they get 1 million hits on it. So it's changed the way of how we communicate our ideas, how we reach people to talk about the issues that are important in this election cycle, and it's really been a huge dynamic change in the way that people communicate in politics.
Why is it important to be informed about this type of communication?
Well, it's either you're informed about it and you're in that world, or else you don't succeed these days. Less people are watching, no offense, but the nightly newscasts and things like that, or getting the hard copy of the New York Times or the Grand Forks Herald. We're getting the information instantaneously on our cell phone, on our iPad. We're watching things on our personal computers or our Mac, and we're not communicating the same way that we used to, where we watch nightly news or we get a newspaper. So you have to communicate where people are going to get their information these days, and that means a complete change in the way that we used to communicate before.
With all this instant communicating, there's room for error. Have you ever been a part of a social media mishap?
I think I've launched a tweet or two and thought, oops, I misspelled that, sorry, and you have to delete it. And yeah, it does, because it's very instantaneous now. It used to be, well, I'll save it and I'll send it out later. But now the news story hits immediately with the people that are involved in it, are tweeting it, are Facebooking, are putting pictures up on Instagram. And you have to be very, very careful. And there's been corporate examples where people are not sure that they're on their company Twitter account. They think they're on their personal one, and they say something that's kind of risque or something that's harmful. And so that opens up a whole new world for the way that we have to communicate. We've got to be far more careful these days.
How hard is this damage control in regards to social media misuse?
It's instantaneous is the problem. There have been situations before where a corporate entity thinks that they're tweeting from their personal page, and they'll say something mean-spirited about a politician, or they'll say something that has a word in it that is not proper. And in other instances, it's the videos that come out where one has to immediately take it back, say I'm sorry, and then try and do the damage control and move on from there.
Okay, and then Twitter is, a form of social media, and you actually nominated it for a Pulitzer Prize. Why do you think it was deserving of that?
During the Iranian elections in 2009, the way that Twitter opened up the capabilities for people in the Middle East, people in Iran, to be able to organize in their areas, to be able to communicate with videos on YouTube, to put groups together in the town square that they couldn't have before because they didn't have that capability because of an authoritarian government. Now people can communicate, whether it's Egypt or it's Tunisia or it's the United States of America or it's an area of Africa. That opens up a whole new area for people to communicate and to get involved in politics.
All right, well, very interesting. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Mark.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
Coming up, crosswalks are meant to be a safe zone for pedestrians to cross the street, but sometimes the white lines don't slow cars down. We'll tell you what moms have to say to distracted drivers. Also, music often makes people want to get up and dance. We'll meet a group that creates the beat with the movement of their feet.
I'm Mike Brookbank, a reporter for The List on WEWS News Channel 5 in Cleveland. I am a proud UND and Studio One alum. Congratulations, Studio One, on 25 amazing years.
Studio One closed captioning is underwritten in part by Options, your disability information source.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the woman.
My doctor tells me to play outside every day.
I see a physician assistant in my rural clinic. I'm glad that she's here.
But healthcare is changing.
Rural North Dakota communities face workforce shortages, particularly in primary care. The University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences addresses the state's healthcare needs by educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. We advocate for improved health in rural communities.
Your future depends on this moment. Take the path that leads to your future.
The University of North Dakota is a place where students thrive, where personal connections matter, where classmates become friends, where leading scholars become mentors. Experience our expertise. Creative, innovative, entrepreneurial, spirited. This is the University of North Dakota.
Everyone wants their children to be safe while riding in a vehicle. Car crashes happen to be the #1 killer of children ages 1 through 12. In a recent study, 20% of parents have failed to read the instructions on how to install a car seat. We wanted your thoughts on using car seats and seat belts when you were growing up.
There was times where I was sitting on the floor in the car and I was riding.
Well, there was no seat belts, no car seats or nothing. And, well, I guess nobody really got killed, but the cars didn't go the speed they're going nowadays either.
We didn't have car seats. We were just running around all the time. Parents yelling to keep it down back there. Yeah.
Absolutely great. There's no seat belts and no car seats. We didn't need that.
I actually was in a car accident that had I had a seat belt on, I think I'd have been dead.
For a kid. When I was a kid, there was no car seat. You know, they strapped you in or you sat on somebody's lap, and that was it.
Actually, for the children too, they just stood up. So it was rather dangerous.
People like to look back at the past and remember tradition. A dance troupe is reviving old-time dance to the modern audience.
The toe-tapping beat of the fiddle and banjo make it impossible to keep your feet still.
It's very infectious. I mean, people very much love to hear it and see it and watch it.
For more than 30 years, the Wild Goose Chase Cloggers have entertained audiences with old-style dances.
It wasn't actually as much tradition as it was a revival of the tradition.
Jim Brooks has been the Cloggers leader for over 25 years and feels responsible for keeping the tradition alive.
As leader, I feel like the shepherd of the group.
The group prides itself on teaching audiences the art and history of clogging through their energizing performances.
Our big thing is to try to teach people the tradition as well as to show and dance the tradition.
Clogging is an Appalachian folk dance that combines the instruments and dances of English, African, and Native American cultures.
Clogging takes all of those traditions and puts them together in a percussive dance form.
Some members of the group are second-generation cloggers and stress the importance of keeping up the tradition.
I think it's really important to remember your roots and to take an interest in what has come before.
Though clogging is an older style dance, its upbeat tempo enlivens newcomers.
Yeah, I would definitely be willing to look up some moves and try them out.
We like to be able to say, look, even though it's old, it's exciting.
With old-timers and toddlers joining in, the curtain won't be closing anytime soon on this old-style dance. With photographer Lisa Cazares, I'm Ann Hook, reporting for Studio One.
Despite 2 knee surgeries, Brooks says he has no intention of sitting in the corner. The Wild Goose Chase Cloggers have performed across Minnesota and overseas in Europe with thousands of performances under their tap shoes. Coming up, the number of votes cast on November 6th could be determined by the number of raindrops on Election Day. We'll tell you which party comes out on top if the weather goes bad. That story plus news, sports, and weather in the next half hour of Studio One.
Closed captioning for Studio One is underwritten in part by NDAD, helping others to help themselves.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
Life is busy, but many professionals are finding ways to advance their career with a Master's in Business Administration at the University of North Dakota. Students attend UND online and on campus. The program is nationally recognized and emphasizes one-on-one with faculty. Find the title you deserve. Enroll today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
From the University of North Dakota, celebrating 25 years, this is Studio One.
Welcome back to Studio One.
Thanks for joining us today.
When people have a passion for something, it almost makes you want to be very interested in it.
Oh yeah, it's fun to talk to people who are really into something.
They have so much to say about it, and actually we get to meet a man who has a passion for sword making.
Yeah, and he has these swords that are super sharp and really expensive, some of them.
Yeah, he did an event where he demonstrated just how sharp they were.
Yeah, so we'll get to see that. Also coming up in the next 30 minutes on Studio One, a coach can have significant influence on their players' lives. We'll meet one man who wants to make a difference in the next generation.
Also, there is an increasing amount of pressure in society to maintain wellness. We'll take a look at why wellness centers are becoming more of a priority.
And every culture has their own food traditions. Later we'll meet a woman who will show us the proper technique for making salsa. But first, here's today's news with Allie Strand.
Thanks, Monty and Katie. Bert and Ernie won't be the only Sesame Street characters worn for Halloween this year. Big Bird costumes are flying off the shelves. The sudden popularity boost for the television character comes after the first presidential debate. Republican candidate Mitt Romney referenced Big Bird when threatening to cut PBS funding. The remark sparked a huge following for the yellow feathered character. Costume vendors are selling out the Big Bird getup across the country. The first vice presidential debate will take place on Thursday night. Current Vice President Joe Biden and Romney running mate Paul Ryan will take the stage in Danville, Kentucky. This will be the latest debate since Romney outshined Obama's lackluster performance in the beginning of October. The pressure will be on Biden to deliver for Team Obama. Speaking points such as Medicare and Social Security will be topics that they hope will spur voter participation. With the upcoming elections, many voters are contemplating their choices on the ballot. For some states, this includes a possible federal issue voter ID law. This issue has sparked a major controversy among states. The legislation would require registered voters to attain a government-issued ID in order to cast a ballot. A Pennsylvania judge turned down the law in September of this year. He said the change this close to an election could be difficult and cause confusion. Republican supporters argue that this law is necessary to prevent voter fraud. However, Democrats say it could prevent many citizens from making it to the polls. So far, 8 states have passed similar voter ID laws. Have you ever gone to the movies and had someone behind you texting or talking on a cell phone and thought, I wish someone would put a stop to that, possibly a ninja? If you're watching a movie at the Prince Charles Cinema in London, England, your wish could come true. The theater joined forces with Morph Suits, a manufacturer of skin-tight bodysuits, to launch an army of cinema ninjas. The volunteers are given free movie tickets in exchange for hiding in the shadows and approaching anyone that disrupts the audience. The Ninja Task Force has recently been picked up by 2 other British movie theaters. According to the rule of the road, the 18-wheeler is king, but the king of the crosswalk looks a little different with 0 wheels and 2 feet.
All right, go ahead.
Moms have a lot to say when it comes to road safety, but for this mom, she has just one message to drivers.
Please slow down.
Erica Weiser walks her kids to and from school every day. And every day, it's the same story.
Cars are always just driving right past, and we'll be standing there sometimes a couple minutes, 5 minutes, waiting for a car to finally stop for us.
Although pedestrian fatalities are lower than they were 15 years ago, Erica still has cause for concern. Statistically, kids under the age of 16 are the most likely to be hit by a car. In fact, according to SafeKids.com, more than 46,000 children are injured each year in pedestrian accidents.
We want everyone to use caution, especially when school's open. Small children are out there. They don't always understand the dangers involved with traffic.
There are 2.2 million accident-related injuries at schools each year, and crosswalks are a major contributor. But drivers may not be entirely to blame. Many say crosswalks allow pedestrians to be overconfident on the road.
Paint on the street is not going to stop any car. So even if a person's in a crosswalk, they still have some responsibility.
A major factor in accident prevention is to pay attention, but keeping roads safe can sometimes just come down to being a good neighbor.
I kind of look at it as like a pay it forward kind of thing, like I will stop for you, and hopefully that will encourage somebody else next time, like, oh wow, maybe I should stop. You can go.
So it doesn't really matter if you're on 4 wheels or 2 feet. Keeping the crosswalk safe requires everyone to look both ways before crossing. This is Olivia Fox reporting for Studio One.
About 5,000 pedestrians are killed each year. This accounts for 11% of motor vehicle deaths. And that's the news for now. Monty and Katie.
Thanks, Allie. Well, you know, my mother always said you gotta look both ways. That's still true today.
Both ways, oh, definitely. You must look both ways. Well, it's time now for the weather news with Stephanie Waldroff.
Well, thanks, Katie and Monty. Earlier this week, Felix Baumgartner was trying to set records earlier in the week by starting off jumping as high as anybody had ever jumped from. The mission started in Roswell, New Mexico, where a 5-story tall balloon was to take Baumgartner up to the edge of space, which is about 122,000 feet up, where he would break 2 records, one for the longest ever free fall and one for breaking the sound barrier. Unfortunately, the mission was postponed due to the windy conditions. For this to happen, surface winds cannot exceed 3 miles per hour because of the upward trip that he has to take through the troposphere, which is where most of the weather, like thunderstorms and rain showers and snow, happens, and then he has to go all the way up into the stratosphere, and that is where he will fall. The next scheduled attempt for this is Monday, October 15th. Now, in November 6th, pollers are going to head out to the election polls, but they don't know how much weather actually affects the polls.
To make their decision, voters will take into account issues like the economy, healthcare, and education. But one factor may affect whether they even arrive at the polls: the weather. Many political science studies have found a connection between weather conditions on election day and voter turnout.
Republicans actually like it when there's bad weather. It almost always helps them in an election.
In a hotly contested presidential race such as this year's, even a snowy day could alter the course of the election. Crucial swing states like Ohio have a must-win nature for both campaigns, but its Midwestern locations' fickle weather make it the most susceptible for this year.
My guess is that there would be a lot of Republicans this election cycle that will be praying for a blizzard in Ohio on November 6th.
Weather's grasp can be loosened through the use of mail-in and absentee ballots. Voters can fill out their ballots at home and not have to worry about whether they need to dig out their umbrellas.
You get them to fill out that ballot and mail it in, and you've got that vote, and it doesn't matter what the weather is.
What's happening in the sky on November 6th might affect more than just people's clothing choices. It might affect the direction of the country for the next 4 years. I'm Jonathan Metz reporting for Studio One Weather.
And there was one study that found that hundreds of thousands of people stayed home during Bill Clinton and George W. Bush's first election because of the bad weather. Now that brings us back to our weather question of the day. What percentage of undecided voters say that bad weather would keep them from voting? The correct answer is 35%. And actually more registered Democrats stay in because of the bad weather than more registered Republicans do.
Interesting. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And I'm sure the people in politics know all about those statistics.
Oh yeah, they're keeping track of every angle. you can
For sure. All right, well, let's turn now again to sports and Brian Gendro.
Thanks, Monty and Katie. A coaching initiative from around the country is breaking ground in the Midwest. Coaching Boys into Men is a program with a focus on enhancing young athletes' lives on and off the gridiron.
High school football is a time for athletes to have fun, make friends, and refine their athletic skills. But retired coach Mike Berg has a different vision than these young men.
It's an opportunity to talk about things and make real progress toward young men.
Coach Berg and hundreds of other schools across the nation are taking part in the Coaching Boys into Men initiative. The purpose is to have high school coaches not only teach their players about the game, but to teach them about life as well.
We implemented it this fall, and so we're thinking that down the line this will hopefully become part of every male athletic program in the county.
The goal is to help athletes build respectful, nonviolent relationships. They learn about respect for women and that violence does not equal strength.
Well, I think Coaching Boys into Men gives our male athletes the opportunity to really learn respectful behavior.
Being on a team can teach you many great things to use in your future, but it can also have negative effects on the young men taking part. Coaches hope the initiative will help these athletes feel comfortable being themselves and not caving in to peer pressure. Specific aspects of this plan include meeting with the coach on a regular basis to discuss not only football, but also daily problems in the players' personal lives.
We'd like to see this become part of the culture of athletics.
Coaching Boys into Men is not mandatory for all high schools, but Coach Berg hopes that it will spread to all athletics and lead to a culture change within school. I'm Taylor Braith reporting for Studio One News.
According to Futures Without Violence, 1 in 10 high school students nationwide has been reportedly physically abused by a boyfriend or girlfriend. This is something Coaching Boys into Men hopes to see change. Now the answer to this week's Studio One Sports Trivia question: who was the last wide receiver to get drafted #1 overall in the NFL draft? The answer is Keyshawn Johnson. That happened in 1996. He came out of the University of Southern California. And that's the sports. Monty and Katie?
Thanks, Brian. People are sometimes drawn to certain events when there's an element of danger involved. We'll meet a man who demonstrates the abilities of some of the world's sharpest swords.
And people around the country are feeling the need to ditch the fast food. We'll tour places people are increasingly visiting to maintain their health.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it, 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
Most people don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. My time clock is around the clock. My ideas are fresh, but they need research and development. My business plan includes marketing strategies, legal documents, and a budget. My startup became possible through mentorship, hands-on experience, and learning from experts in the field. The Center for Innovation has contributed to more than 400 University of North Dakota student startups. Come with an idea. Leave with a business.
You're watching Studio One, twice named the best college television show in the nation by the National Association of College Broadcasters.
Swords have been used around the world for thousands of years. They have been used for battle, hunting, and sparring. One man has a close connection with sharp blades.
Daniel Watson has a background in engineering, teaching, and taekwondo, a rare combination for most, but his favorite activity deals with steel.
These are my children. I create them.
It's hard to imagine one person could have such a close connection with something as deadly as swords.
Everybody thinks their own babies are beautiful. Now, every now and then I will admit there has been an ugly one, but most of my babies are beautiful.
Yes, you should be. Daniel found his first sword in his grandfather's shed when he was 9. It was a 300-year-old sword from China. Daniel's interest led to him taking classes on how to make these weapons.
There's sparring, there's schools of combat, and then there are the schools of cutting.
Daniel makes sure to mention the safety of using swords. He says there is a strict difference between fighting with swords and using them appropriately.
Oh, you don't fight with swords, you fight with sticks. You fight with padded weapons, and you practice cutting with the actual sword.
His first sword fight was between Daniel and the guardians of his grandfather's livestock.
Went out and split a fence post with it. I thought it was cool, but my grandfather was very upset because he had to replace the fence post.
Even though sword making can be dangerous, Daniel will not let that stop him from sticking with his hobby. With photographer Kelby Leak, I'm Jimmy Geffro reporting for Studio One.
Daniel has been making swords since 1979. His swords have been called the sharpest swords in the world. Even in the midst of economic downturn, one industry has maintained steady growth. Wellness centers across the nation are proving there is wealth in health.
Rochelle and her husband Ed understand the importance of being active and have made exercising a part of their daily lifestyle.
I like working out because it gets me going. And it's tough being a grandma.
Movement is medicine for them, creating change in their physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
I think everybody wants to feel good about themselves. You know, when you're working out, it releases endorphins into your body, everybody feels better.
And unfortunately, fitness doesn't come in a bottle. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says more than 1/3 of U.S. adults are obese. Nationwide, the South has the highest prevalence of obesity at 29.5%, followed closely by the Midwest at 29%.
We had more of the family time aspect of life when in the 70s and even in part of the 80s. And then we've gone towards such a technology era that we're kind of missing a component, which is just time for yourself.
30 years ago, exercising consisted of maybe a treadmill and weights in a small room. Today, it's expanded to large facilities with hundreds of machines and personal trainers.
You've got space. You have access to personal trainers just about 24/7.
The focus of health is also important, though, for another age group. The CDC also says approximately 12.5 million children and adolescents aged 2 to 19 years old are obese. This has almost tripled since 1980.
It's not just about adults working out and becoming fit. It's about the children and making sure they're being active and not sedentary, and that's a problem that we're trying to solve.
This fitness center in Grand Forks, North Dakota has partnered with the USDA Human Nutrition and Research Center by providing space for wellness studies.
They will bring people into this facility, study their habits, whether it be physical and nutrition, a combination of both.
The opportunity to partner with other agencies, whether it's other healthcare providers, nutrition, and the like, is really where it's at. So it's so much more than just a place to go sweat.
And just like Ed and Rochelle, all we need is the right kind of motivation.
You need to move that body.
I'm Stephanie Shire reporting for Studio One.
Stephanie has more information on this story. With the help of Skype technology, she is at the University of North Dakota Wellness Center with Lori Bedding.
Thanks, Katie. Lori, when we talked in your interview before, we discussed a lot about exercising as being a part of wellness, but there's so much more to that. There's 7 dimensions of wellness, and could I have you just elaborate a little bit on that for me?
Certainly. We look at wellness as being intellectual, social, physical, environmental, spiritual. There's so many different parts to it. And especially on a college campus, we understand that it takes all of those working together to make a successful student. So we have things that we address as far as stress, spirituality. We do a lot with occupational, as you might imagine, but it is so much more than just physical.
Okay, and something else that stuck out in the interview to me was when you said wellness is a journey, not a destination. Can you explain that to me?
Certainly. When you put it in that perspective, it really opens you up to realize that it is a process, and sometimes it's forward movement and sometimes backwards. For example, someone who tries to quit smoking will often try 4 to 7 times before they're successful. So we want people to understand to just keep moving because we're all in it together.
Okay, thank you so much, Lori, for being with us again. Katie?
Thanks, Stephanie, again from where students have access to that wonderful fitness center. Next, food preparation is important for tasty dishes. Our next guest has tips on how to make the perfect salsa.
Studio One is a television show produced by students at the University of North Dakota.
You can be a part of the graphics team, the marketing team, news team, programming team, production team.
Training never ends.
You get to produce guests, you get to do the reporting side of it.
It's really worth the experience. You will not regret it.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it, 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
My doctor tells me to play outside every day.
I see a physician assistant in my rural clinic. I'm glad that she's here.
But healthcare is changing.
Rural North Dakota communities face workforce shortages, particularly in primary care. The University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences addresses the state's healthcare needs by educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. We advocate for improved health in rural communities.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the woman.
Food often tastes better when it's prepared by mom or grandma. That may be because it might be more authentic.
Mexican food instructor Leonor Alcantara Kilsdorf moved from Mexico to the United States. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
So what was family dinner like for you growing up?
Well, it was more interesting with fresh foods every day and eating with the whole family together.
And so fresh food was on the menu pretty much every time?
Yes,
Okay.
mainly.
No microwave?
No, not a microwave.
And we're going to be making pico de gallo today.
Yes.
But at home right now, do you still cook the way your parents cooked?
Yes, I do.
So you
I bring the fresh fruit usually, and then I will cook at home in the
Okay.
same way. Yeah.
Now there's a meaning behind pico de gallo. What exactly does it mean?
Well, it means the pick of the rooster. As spicy it is, the pepper, as spicy would be the salsa.
Oh, okay. So we're ready to make some spicy stuff here today. Let's get started. What's the first thing to do?
Well, we have to add the ingredients like onion and tomatoes and red tomatoes and the jalapeno and then the cilantro.
Okay.
And so,
And it looks like a pretty basic recipe. There's not a ton of things going into this.
yes,
So,
it's very, very simple.
okay, well, let's go ahead and start chopping up
Okay.
tomatoes, I guess, or
Yes, I
onions
guess
the first thing?
onion is the first.
Sure.
We can start with the first.
And we'll try not to get too close to the onion right now. Now, what about the green bunching onions? Can you use that instead of a white onion, or does it matter what type of onion?
Well, it has to be like white onion because the onion gives you the flavor in the salsa, and the green onion usually is more mild.
Okay.
So it depends how much do you like it.
And now we're actually cutting, by hand. Is there a difference between a food processor or cutting by hand? Which one is better?
I guess it just depends on the person. Most people like to be doing by hand. It's more common. But if it's in any events, well, you can be working with the other cutters.
And I've noticed sometimes when using a food processor, it gets a little frothy. Is that a bad thing?
It depends how much it is chopped, because usually those cutters, usually you chop twice instead of one time, so they can be in that case. So we just need to pour.
And we've got our little demo
yeah,
cam.
the onion
coming up.
You can't smell it through the camera, but
Yes. And now you have a Mexican cooking class. What inspired you to start teaching others?
Well, it's very interesting, actually. I really enjoyed it, teaching the classes, because mainly the people can have a little experience in the kitchen, and also to learn how to cook some different meals for their families. So I think it's kind of interesting. They can do it at home, and it's easy to cook.
is this considered an easy recipe, what we're doing today?
Yes, it is.
So this would be a good starter for
Yes.
somebody who's just starting into Mexican
Yes,
type
absolutely.
cuisine.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just gonna put it over here.
So we'll dump it in the dish.
That's a lot of onions. That looks
well,
good.
I'm just gonna beat it a little bit.
So we've got the onions done.
Yes, and then it comes the red tomato.
Now, tomatoes come in a lot of different sizes and shapes and things. What is important with tomatoes?
Well, the tomato, it has to be if it's the red tomato or the Roma tomato. The Roma tomato gives you the flavor. So the red, it's as the red it is, the flavor it would get in your salsa.
Okay. So you want really ripe tomatoes then when you're doing this?
Yes. Usually, when as fresh it is, the tomatoes, as fresh as your salsa will become.
Okay.
And we're cutting all these vegetables up. Is there a certain size to cut the ingredients into?
Well, for this kind of salsa, usually it's more chopping in little squares, but there are other kinds of salsas that is making a little differently.
Sure. Okay. And we have a couple minutes left. We may not get through everything. You're trying to chop as fast as you can.
Yeah.
So we have the tomatoes. We also have jalapeno. And there are a lot of different peppers as well. I mean, there's just the normal green peppers, which are really mild. Jalapenos are a little more spicy, and on and on. What is normal for pico de gallo?
Usually it's the serrano peppers because the traditional one is the spicy as you'll get. And the jalapeno peppers, it's mild pepper, so it can be spicy but not as strong as the serrano.
And we have all these, traditional, when you think of salsa, you think of tomatoes and onions and peppers, but we also have a lime up here. And what is the purpose of the lime?
The lime gives you the flavor and also gives you the how kind of mild the salsa. So sometimes it's just mainly it's the taste and the flavor too.
Okay. So once we get that in, the peppers, how much can you deviate from this recipe? Can you just throw things in that you think might taste good?
Well, you can add a little bit of olive oil, just kind of mild. If you don't like so much spicy, you can just skip one of the peppers or mild with the olive oil. Some people add black pepper, so and just for taste.
Excellent. And then we just mix all those things together, and then we're good to go. All right. Well, we're gonna go to break here. We're gonna let you keep chopping, but thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
It smells delicious.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, you're watching Studio One from the University of North Dakota. We'll be back right after this. You can go ahead and keep going if you want.
The One is underwritten in part by NDAD, helping others to help themselves.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the woman.
The University of North Dakota is a place where students thrive, where they learn from leading experts, share in discoveries and create knowledge. Experience our expertise. Creative, innovative, entrepreneurial, spirited. This is the University of North Dakota.
Your future depends on this moment. Take the path that leads to your future.
Studio One is a television show produced by students at the University of North Dakota.
You can be a part of the graphics team, the marketing team, news team, programming team, production team.
Training never ends.
You get to produce guests, you get to do the reporting side of it.
It's really worth the experience. You will not regret it.
Most people don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. My time clock is around the clock. My ideas are fresh, but they need research and development. My business plan includes marketing strategies, legal documents, and a budget. My startup became possible through mentorship, hands-on experience, and learning from experts in the field. The Center for Innovation has contributed to more than 400 University of North Dakota student startups. Come with an idea. Leave with a business.
Tune in next week on Studio One. We'll talk to a man who was part of a groundbreaking unmanned aircraft flight test. Plus, we'll have other news and entertainment stories for you.
And we've got fresh pico de gallo. We're going to leave you now with pictures of a running event which drew all sorts of participants. From all of us here at Studio One, have a great week.